Okay, I'm very excited to have on the show here today Steve and Annette Economides, who are the New York Times best-selling authors of actually more than one book. They are the parents of 5 grown children, and they're considered family finance experts, and often they're kind of considered experts in frugality, which, guys, actually leads me to my first question before we even start. Is being frugal the pathway to financial success?
Oh, being frugal is fun. It's a challenge.
It is. And I would say it can bring success. I think of frugal living as a way to enrich your life, to have what everybody else has, but to get it in a far more creative way.
Walt Disney said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. We believe that about finances and finding deals.
Well, it is true. You guys are noted for finding unbelievable deals, which we'll get to in a minute, because like to hear some of the more amazing things you've done recently. But it's not. I just want to clarify. And you said it's fun. This is not necessarily a recipe for becoming super rich. It's a recipe for what?
It's a recipe for stretching what you have. So we think of our lifestyle as very stable. So no matter what the markets are doing, the economy, whatever, the peaks and the lows and the highs, we're just sailing right through it.
When the economy crashed in 2008, we didn't change our spending. We didn't change our lifestyle. We didn't move out of our house. The house was paid off. It is a recipe for sustainability. That's the key.
Okay, I think that's actually important because given the volatility of the economy, my day job is I'm a financial advisor. And quite frankly, one of the concerns people have, which often is maybe a little too extreme, but I think it's fair that they're concerned, is, oh my gosh, what happens if I go broke? And they're so focused on the investments going down that they don't actually think about just paying the bills on a monthly basis, which is more your focus, right?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the goal is pay the bills, but also have money set aside, build your emergency fund,
right.
Start building your investments. It's a progressive plan, but the first step is stop using credit cards. The second step is start building equity and wealth, build your budget, build your emergency fund, and then start investing.
And it's also having a budget, having a spending plan, like you said, Doug, to manage the day-to-day. Because when your cars are paid off, when you have no consumer debt, when your house is paid off, really that's a very stable place to live. If you lost your ability to work, you could probably still survive.
Let's go over the math a little bit on this, because the fact is I agree with you. I'm kind of a no-debt kind of guy. I believe in it because I think from a stability standpoint, if you don't owe money, then you're miles ahead of everyone else. But there is an argument that a lot of people will make. For example, no one says, oh, it's a good financial move to be in credit card debt. But lots of people say, listen, you can get a really cheap mortgage today. Why not buy a property, take a mortgage, and then you have all that liquidity to invest in something else?
Absolutely. And you can also lose money on that, or you can lose money on your house. There is risk involved whenever you borrow money. And, the old saying of the borrower becomes the lender's slave. We've seen servitude skyrocket in the States and internationally, and we don't want to owe anybody anything. And the freedom you have when you don't owe anybody anything is huge. But even do the math. If you're paying interest, now the first house we bought, we had an 11% mortgage on.
Yeah, that was in the mid-'80s, right after the savings and loan crisis.
Okay, we were supposed to pay, we borrowed $47,000. It was a repo fixer-upper, 4-bedroom house. We were supposed to pay $150,000 in principal and interest over 30 years. We paid that house off in 9 years. Our total principal and interest was $70,000. We cut $80,000 off of what we should have paid by focusing, by having priorities, by managing our money, and paying that thing off early.
Okay.
That's a huge savings.
All right, and then, Doug, we took that big chunk of money and we put it down on the next house, which is a 5-bedroom on 3/4 of an acre with a citrus orchard. And at the time we bought it, it was right before the market exploded. So we paid $220,000 for this house. At one point, the house we're sitting in was worth $1 million. I would say that's a pretty good investment, wouldn't you?
No, it's nice. Listen, it's always good if you can buy a property at a low point and get it and see it appreciate in value. Of course, it's not always possible because a lot of living expenses are just because that's where you have to live for either work or family, raising kids. We're talking to Steve and Annette Economides, who perhaps are known as America's cheapest family, but they are not suffering. That's what we're hearing today. One of the things that sometimes happens when children grow up in a family where the parents are very focused on finances is, quite frankly, the kids become a little weird about money. How do you raise your kids to not become weird about money, but to be really responsible?
That's a great question. And people get...
Maybe they are weird about money. Sorry, I was making an assumption.
People ask that all the time. And really, you would think that we are all about focused on money, but we aren't. Because I think we just made life a treasure hunt. We tried to figure out what everybody needed, and we showed them how to get what they needed with good quality for the least amount of money. So we developed resources. We figured out where the best thrift stores and consignment stores were. Our kids really did feel like they were playing a game, and they were playing to win.
Here's the bottom line for it, Doug. You deal with people who have money, and they want to invest. They want to build their retirement. And a lot of them have worked very, very hard. Maybe they're working really hard right now, and they may have this philosophy that they don't want their kids to have to work as hard, so they give their children money.
Big mistake.
Here's my philosophy. I was a competitive gymnast through college. That's what paid for college for me. And I've got to tell you that I had to work out really hard. I had to lift weights. I had to train. And, I built my muscles not because my parents did the lifting for me. In the same way with finances, if we want our children to become financially strong, become financially independent, giving them money is not going to build financial muscles. So what we decided to do is we realized that the USDA says it's going to cost $261,000 from 0 to 17. And we decided we were going to take the money that we should have spent on them, according to the USDA, but we didn't spend that much, obviously. We decided to give them a little bit of it at a time as in an age-appropriate manner for them to manage.
But they had to earn it. So we taught our kids how to earn their own money. They had to do the work for it.
So we set up kind of a fake economy in our house. And so by the time they turned 11, they had to take the money they were earning and they had to set aside some for charitable giving, some for spending, and some for savings. And then they started buying their own clothes.
Oh, we could talk forever about this.
And then when...
Wait, let's narrow it down. But I want to, there's way too much to go over, unfortunately, in just a few minutes. Let's talk about this charity issue. Because a lot of families talk about charity. And the fact is, when you look at statistics, Americans are considered amongst the most charitable countries in the world, but it's still, we're talking 1 or 2% of income actually goes to charity. What do you teach your kids?
Well, we give more than 10% of our income to charity, and we taught our kids to give 10% of their income to charity. So all of our kids are very generous givers. They realize that some of what they have should be shared with others.
I'll give you an example. Like one of our kids was working with a youth group, and they were going on a retreat. And some of the kids in the youth group didn't have money to go on the retreat, so our son Joe took money out of his giving envelope. We set him up on cash envelopes, and he sponsored some of these kids to go to summer camp. It's not necessarily just giving to big organizations.
I remember about 15 years ago, I heard a speech by Howard Jonas, who at the time he started a company called IDT that was competing with AT&T. So you got to be pretty gutsy to do this. And Howard Jonas was quite successful. And I heard a speech he gave where he said that he and his wife give 20% of their income to charity. And I was very inspired by the whole speech. And I remember I went home to my wife, and this is a long time ago. I was much younger, and we did not have as big or successful a business as we have now. And I said to her, I said, honey, I heard this great speech, and I think we should try to do that. And she was on board right away. And I believe that the fact that we give 20% to charity, and we talk about it, and our kids do it too, even since they're very little, they're involved in that. Apart from the fact, we can talk about the karma or the religious aspects of giving, it makes you look at money in a very different way. You don't feel that you deserve it. You feel that it's a privilege to have it and a responsibility to handle it well.
Totally agreed.
It's called stewardship. And stewardship gets a bum rap in the religious institutions because it always sounds like you're doing a fundraiser. But in my mind, we are stewarding what we've been given. It's not ours. It's ours to channel and to manage and to multiply. That's steward.
Yeah, I think that's important. All right, we're nearing the end of our time, but I want to hear one super story of frugality that maybe you could share to inspire the listeners today.
There's so many we could share.
Yes, there are. Gosh, everyday, day-to-day living, we're like grocery gurus. So I'm in one of our favorite regional stores, and I always swing past the meat case to see what's on markdown. Literally, they have overstocked items. I find chicken legs for 19 cents a pound. I'm like, for 19 cents a pound, I'm going to load up my cart, take it home, load it into the freezer, and guess what? We're eating chicken legs for the next couple of weeks.
Well, we don't do them every day.
We know, we don't.
The philosophy is like Warren Buffett. When you see a deal, you buy it, and then you know it's a deal, you stock up, and then you eat it over a long period of time. I'll give you another example of frugality. Years ago when I was working as an advertising account exec, I'd get an annual bonus. Now, the bonus could be anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. It just depended on how the year went.
Wow.
And so what we would do is we take a big portion of that and we use that to pay off our house. And we have a big portion of it. Mm-hmm. And then we took a small portion to enjoy and to have some fun. So Annette looked at me and said, you play guitar. Why don't you go buy a nice guitar, like a Martin guitar? Well, at the time, Martin guitars were selling, the one I wanted was selling for about $4,000. And but I wasn't going to pay $4,000. So I started hitting all the pawn shops, all the music stores around Phoenix. When you live in a big city, there is always someone who has the thing you want, and they desperately want to get rid of it. And if you find that person, you're going to find a deal. So I picked up a Martin D41, American-made solid top guitar, and I paid $900 for it. That guitar was
less than 25%.
It's worth $3,000 if I had to resell it. So there are always bargains to be had. And those are the things we just love talking about. And I got to tell you this, Doug, nobody ever brags about paying retail.
Right. Okay. Right. No, I certainly think you guys are the pros. And I know there are a lot more stories that you tell about it. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to tell them on today's show. But tell me in the last few seconds, how can people follow you, follow your work, and hear more of the stories about how you manage your money?
They can read all about us on our website at moneysmartfamily.com. They can find us on Facebook, Steve and Annette Economides,
America's
Cheapest Family. We just reached over 2 million views on YouTube.
Wow.
We've got like 8,000 subscribers, and we're doing more and more videos. Our focus right now is ways to make frugal fun, because it really is a blast possible.
That sounds fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We will put links to all of that at the show notes of today's show. Steve and Annette Economides, best of luck, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Thanks so much, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.